I've seen some people in my comment section lately talking about how they're sad that we as a society and through science haven't been able to identify what causes pedophilia and sexual predators. One person in particular said that they were looking at the recidivism rate when it comes to sex offenders. For those who don't know what recidivism means, it's like the relapse word for crime, basically like you're going to reoffend or relapse in the criminal activity that you're doing. And this individual stated that they had come across some studies where those who volunteer to get chemically castrated still reoffend. That chemical castration doesn't seem to fix the problem, and that it doesn't really seem to be doing anything at all to prevent sex crimes or pedophilia. And in all honesty, the recidivism rate for most crimes is incredibly high, but I understand why there's particular concern when it comes to sex abuse, sex crimes, and pedophilia. But what I do want to say is that science is looking into this. So when I was researching for my YouTube video on grooming, I actually dove into a lot of the science surrounding the brain when it comes to sex offenders and pedophiles. And right now what science is doing is they're doing a lot of MRI scannings of the brain, particularly looking at the gray matter and the white matter of the brain to try and determine what differences exist in the brain of a sex offender and a pedophile compared to not only other criminals, but a neurotypical individual. For those who don't know what gray matter is, it's basically the shell, like if we're talking about a turtle, it's the outer part of the brain. That's like the shell of the brain. And it's not as sensitive as the white matter of the brain, which would be like the turtle itself, the interior stuff. Now, the gray matter of the brain tends to be more of a memory processing center, emotion processing center, impulse processing center, whereas the white matter of the brain is really where the nitty-gritty of your neurons and your axons and all those fine special little connections take place. It's what helps us not only process information but contextualize information. It's what helps us make appropriate decisions, being able to weigh X amounts of pros and cons. So it does also influence the gray matter of the brain, but it's also what controls our muscle functions, what helps us experience hunger and thirst and arousal and things like that. And there's something called a brain lesion theory that one study talked about, where they noticed that there are a lot of brain abnormalities or brain lesions on the gray matter of the brain when it comes to pedophiles. And they had come to a conclusion in their own study that the more gray matter abnormalities you had, the more likely somebody was to be a pedophile. However, those who are career criminals naturally have more gray matter abnormalities, more brain lesions. That's just something that is observed and exhibited in people who have very antisocial behaviors or other mental health issues that lead them into a life of crime because they don't have that impulse control or that emotional regulation. So another study said, hey, we think that they're onto something. Let's look at the white matter of the brain. And they looked at anomalies within the white matter of the brain. And they determined in their study that, yes, gray matter abnormalities in the brain do affect whether somebody is a criminal. But they can't necessarily pinpoint that gray matter abnormalities cause pedophilia. But more white matter brain abnormalities tend to be more common in pedophiles than other criminals. So they're on this precipice where it seems like if we're going to try and pinpoint the source of pedophilia, it's going to be on the more interior aspect of the brain and not the exterior aspect of the brain. Obviously, this is going to require more research and a lot more MRIs. And I honestly think it would be very beneficial if we had registered sex offenders be required to get brain scans, to get MRIs, so that their neuroimaging can be examined, so that we may be able to actually pinpoint the cause of, not only pedophilia, but sex offenders as well. So there is hope, there is research being done, and we're lucky enough to have the technology to do it. It's a slow-going process, and that's the unfortunate thing about it. Because not only that, you can't just have one study and go based off of that one study. Other people have to be able to replicate it. It has to be reviewed. There's all sorts of things that go into it. But I do want to give people hope that science is looking into this. Science has a duty to the community, and there is a big interest on the psychological level to identify what causes this type of behavior. Now, I am paraphrasing quite a bit because it's been a couple of weeks since I did my research for that video. So if you really want to know the context of those studies and some of the quotes that I have from those studies, highly recommend clicking the link in my bio. It'll take you to that video. You by no means have to do that. If you do, I appreciate it. It matters a lot. It's a deep dive into grooming and not only how it happens, what the signs are, what the pathology and psychology of groomers is. It's about an hour long. It's a lot. I go in depth because I think it's important to educate people. But please understand that someday, somehow, we might actually get answers as to what causes this type of behavior.